Well, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is our December 2024 installment of call it an AMA, call it office hours, for our monthly office hours that we do that I do once a month for anybody to be able to join us, and it's really intended for everybody who is a Microsoft 365 developer. So that would be people who are SharePoint developers, people who are Microsoft Teams developers, Copilot extensibility, doing stuff with Graph, anything kind of tangentially related to that. The point of this is for me just to kind of give you the floor as much as we can, as many questions as you may have, and address any questions that you may have that we can go throughout these office hours. I will tell you, I just put some stuff in the chat that I haven't received any questions ahead of time. Actually realized, unfortunately, this morning that our reminder email didn't go out like it normally does the Monday, about 2 Mondays before we do our office hours. So it didn't go out. That was my mistake. I guess I did not schedule that one to go out. So I'll fix that for the January one. But sometimes people will submit questions based on what based on when they get that reminder of things that are top of mind to them. So didn't have that this time. I screwed up a little bit, I guess, but that's okay. We can still have our office hours today, and hopefully people who are joining us will have questions that we can address, and it won't be a short office hours. Otherwise it will be a short one, because we're not just going to hold it just to hold it and fill up the hour just cause. So I don't have a ton of things that I wanted to cover in the slides that I've got here, but just for people who are new here, let's go ahead and let's just run through the slides. Just really quick introduction. My name is Andrew Connell. I'm a Microsoft 365 developer. I call myself a full stack developer. So Microsoft uses terms like pro code or code first, low code, no code. I don't particularly care for those terms. Low code, I think it's more important like what kind of work you do and what kind of tools you use. So, they say low code, no code. I think more like maker or power user, and you use tools like the Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate, Copilot Studio, stuff like that. For people like me, which is more what I like I said, full stack developer, I like to think of us as the people, actually using the term from Wikipedia and from all the job boards. Full stack developer is someone who is responsible for both the front end and the back end of an app. So the way I define that is that in the Microsoft 365 space is that we are essentially web developers that are creating either web services or web apps, maybe using the SharePoint framework for SharePoint Online or on-prem, maybe using some of the native approaches that we have with Microsoft Teams development, and also same thing with like Copilot and how the extensibility we can do with Microsoft 365 Copilot, as well as some of the other ones that I had there on the slide. And then so that's the client side solutions that we end up creating. And then we will also implement anything server side that we need in order to make this stuff work. So that's how I kind of look at this stuff. That's how I see it. You see like some information about me. You can find out how to contact me and stuff. I have it all listed over there on the left-hand part of the slide. I have a company called Voitanos where I do Microsoft 365 development training, and happy to answer questions about that if you have any questions, but we're going to focus on users' questions first. As far as the agenda, the way I like to cover these for those of you who are new is that I focus primarily like on 3 different areas, although nothing is really off limits. SharePoint Framework for customizing and extending SharePoint Online and Viva connections, creating apps for Microsoft Teams. That would be like tabs, bots. I guess we could talk a little bit about that at some point today. I don't think we're going to call these things bots really going forward. I think they're all just going to be considered agents. And then Microsoft 365 Copilot extensibility, and really your question. So I have a couple things sometimes that are prepared for like the latest news in these areas. There's not much because we're in a slow kind of a news cycle. Ignite is about 3 weeks past. We're coming up on the holidays between like some of the popular holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, other holidays in the end of the year. So things get really quiet. There's not a bunch of news and announcements that comes around this time of year. And then of course, by the time we do our January office hours, it'll still be pretty quiet because we won't have a bunch of stuff to announce right in the new year. But at any rate, fairly quiet time, actually kind of nice to get caught up on stuff. The way I lay this out, and also I had it on the last slide a second ago, but I have a few slides, actually very few. I'm trying to see how many I have here, less than 10. So I only got like 3 or 4 more. And then it's really open to your questions. So I'll come back to that in just a second. We'll come back to your questions in just a second. Again, I don't see any questions here in the chat on the YouTube stream. I haven't seen any. I'll keep checking in a couple places where I posted this stuff, like anything inside of our Discord community. Nobody's posted channels there or any questions there. Nobody's posted any questions to the Reddit post that I put up. Let's check LinkedIn, as I shared it there as well. If anybody had questions, still nothing there. And Blue Sky, and I don't see anything on Blue Sky either. So we're pretty much, if you got a question, you're probably gonna get a good chance to get it answered. So really quick, SharePoint Framework, big thing, State of the Union. Where are we? No news since the last time we got together in November. The current version of the SharePoint Framework and the Yeoman Generator is version 1.20. The big things there were some improvements to adaptive card extensions, specifically around the ability to have HTML as part of the quick view, and some new chart options for the data visualization option. Before, we only had those line charts you can see there in the slide, like just these two right here that I'm using my little laser pointer. All these other ones that you see listed here, these were all new that were added. The donut chart, the eye chart, and then the bar chart are all brand new. There was a Webpack issue that was fixed when we were from 1.19, when Microsoft made some changes to it. You saw that if you had an error in your build, you would get these object errors, which totally useless. They went through and they fixed that, so that's no longer the case. Furthermore, they also made some changes to the underlying ESLint rules and the version and the React templates, but nothing all that major in terms of updates. What they've talked about for vNext, what's coming in 1.21, they teased a little bit. Maybe some stuff is going to come by the end. Maybe this will be a preview release before the end of the year. I seriously doubt it. I don't think we're going to see anything until the first quarter of next year. The big thing that they've talked about here, they've talked a little bit about like some support with this adaptive card web part that you see listed here. We'll see how that looks. I'm going to come back to this one in just a minute. They've also talked about some SharePoint Framework and Copilot integration scenarios. Can't really go into that in too much depth because they haven't really said too much about it publicly. So I'm not going to risk talking about it and say something I probably shouldn't say. So we'll just wait and see what they have to release. And then this other option here about Power Card support in Viva Connection. So enabling us to have integration of cards for low code scenarios. Still, they haven't said much about what that means, so we don't really know. This one right here is interesting though. The SharePoint Framework powered SP hosted apps and full page SPFx apps with unique app registration. So this, they've talked a little bit about this in the community calls. There was a little bit of a discussion on it at a session at the European SharePoint conference in Stockholm. I believe that was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was a session that Vesa Juvonen from Microsoft, who hosts most of the community calls from the Patterns and Practices group, and I was not able to be in the session because I had a conflict of somewhere else I was supposed to be when he did it, so I didn't get to see what he talked about. I was at the conference and I had my own sessions I was delivering and my own workshop and interviews I was doing, and I wasn't able to go to his session. I saw a screenshot of the slide, and it essentially sounds like what they're doing is they're going to allow us to have a full page app like we do today with a web part in SharePoint Framework. And similar to how isolated web parts work, they're going to give us the ability to have a Microsoft Intra application, Intra ID app, that will be tied to that specific instance. So it will be in its own subdomain as well, which means it's going to be rendered inside of an iframe so that you will be able to uniquely assign permissions to items in the for this app, or to uniquely assign permissions to this application that you're creating, this SPFx app. There was a big discussion sometime last week in a LinkedIn post about just some people using, how do I say this? There were some people that are using misunderstanding that when you assign a permission to a component in SharePoint Online, like a SharePoint Framework component, that those permissions are tied to the SharePoint Framework solution and not to the entire tenant. That's not correct. They are tied to the entire tenant. They're delegated permissions, and so yes, the user also has to have rights, but most customers don't understand that the permission is not tied to a particular app. It's tied to everything, the entire tenant, which means I don't even need to deploy a SharePoint Framework solution to get access to a permission that we're using there. So I think that it was a big discussion that kicked off a bunch of different discussion on both on LinkedIn from a project that somebody was working on. So just is interesting. It was an interesting conversation. So this would be a nice little benefit or improvement if we had the ability to do this. Technically, we have the ability to do it today, but still remains to be seen because we just frankly haven't seen them. They haven't done anything about this just yet to release it. It's still pretty much a new thing for us. So we'll have to see where they go with this. Okay. Next thing I've got here. This is just, I kept this from the last, our last office hours, this slide. There's two big hot button issues that I still see in the SharePoint the primary repository for SharePoint Framework issues, which is the SP Dev Docs issue list. The first one is that there was an update to the list UI. So they have a new list UI, and when they released it, it broke all of our SharePoint Framework customizations, specifically our extensions. So things like field customizers, command set extensions, they all just stopped working because they weren't even loading them. It's like they just completely forgot about the SharePoint Framework. They pulled it out and then put it right back in as a way to say, if you are using a SharePoint Framework extension, like command set or a field customizer extension, Microsoft will load the old list UI, so your stuff still works. Otherwise, they'll load the new list UI where they're fixing things. And that both of these issues are kind of like, they're related. You still see people running into problems and they're still trying to fix stuff. This has been going on now for about 2 months. So it's a little frustrating. What the most frustrating thing is about this to me is that second one you see there on the bullets, where Microsoft has the guy that's running through this whole thing from Microsoft on the in the issue list. He is the thing that's frustrating about to me is that they basically confirmed that they're not even using the whole first release or targeted release tenant and release approach. Instead, they're just doing everything directly in production, and it's causing some significant frustrations with some customers who were using the first release tenants to be able to, or first release like Ring, and have their tenants configured that way so that they could see updates before their customers or their employees saw them. And if they were an ISV, it was a way for ISVs to see when things changed that prior to them. It's a way for them to see things before the things changed. Really frustrating, really frustrating, really ticked off a lot of people. in the community. But right now, it's still as is. We're still kind of dealing with it. They still aren't really respecting that whole first release thing. And Microsoft has said nothing about it, which is really frustrating. The guy that did it basically is like, everybody does things their own way. And it's like, we were told that if we used first release, we'd be fine. And unfortunately, that's kind of not what's going on. So that's a little frustrating, I think, for a lot of us. So anyway, just something to be aware of, something to keep your eye on. I'm just checking to see if anybody's submitted any questions here. Still don't see anything. Just want to make sure that anybody on the different places where he posted this, anybody had a question that they wanted to ask. Don't see it. Don't see it. Yeah, still don't see any questions here. Okay. It's okay if people don't have questions. We'll just make this a little bit shorter today. Okay, so let me just jump back to my slides. We're almost all the way through everything. The next slide that I've got here, this is kind of a big thing. This came out last night. A new Message Center announcement that they have some changes coming to Microsoft 365 Copilot coming in January, mid-January. So you can see a link there on the slide, Message Center ID 958903. What this means, what they're doing is they're changing a few things. So if you've got Microsoft Copilot with an Intra ID account, that is going to be renamed to Microsoft 365 Copilot. If you have when you go to the URL microsoft.com/copilot, that is going to redirect you to m365copilot.com. When you look at the Message Center, though, it actually talks about redirecting you to one of the new domains. I'll come back. I'll show you the Message Center announcement in just a moment. They're also renaming today. There's an app inside that's called Microsoft 365. Where Copilot is. They're renaming that to Microsoft 365 Copilot, and the icon is also changing. And you can see that this screenshot over here on the right-hand side, this is taken straight from the Message Center announcement. So let me show you that Message Center announcement here so you can see what this looks like. I'm going to get my mouse over here. There's my mouse. Okay, so these are some of the changes you've got. So again, this is the Message Center ID that I just told you about. They're making some name changes to simplify the user experience is what they're saying. They said Microsoft Copilot for Intra account users is going to be renamed to Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. That was on the slide. And the M365 app is being named M365 Copilot, and its icon will be updated as they announced back at Ignite 2024. Let's see what else they have here. All these changes are going to happen in mid-January. This is one that's interesting here. When you go to office.com and Microsoft365.com, those are going to automatically redirect to the new Microsoft domain, cloud.microsoft.com. So m365.cloud.microsoft. This is the new domain that Microsoft is using. They announced this earlier this year. This is the new domain that they're using for all of their customer-facing cloud services. So we've seen them talk about Teams is going to be at teams.cloud.microsoft. Looks like m365.cloud.microsoft is going there as well. So just a new name that needs to be kind of like, that's just rolling off the tongue here. And then again, these are some of the other updates, some of the other things I had in that screenshot just a minute ago. So we've got everything just kind of all set up. Yeah, it's just all kind of everything here just is how is all just some of the changes they've got coming with the Microsoft Admin Center. Okay, so let me jump back over to my slides and appears I've lost my presenter view of my slides. Fantastic. That stinks. All right, so now I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. I see Bill has submitted one. Thank you very much, Bill. You're the only one that has submitted a question. So if anybody else that's joined us, I know we don't have a huge number of people that are logged in right now. Please feel free to post a question. I'm happy to go through and to answer it as they show up. So Bill says he's working with a Teams toolkit for VS Code. with Tab, with React, and using the Tab and React with Fluent UI template. Is there any guidance on how to remove the Azure function from the bicep file? So actually, this probably would be good if we did this like as a demo. So let me come over here. Let me open up and get an instance of VS Code. And VS Code. I'm trying to find an instance of VS Code that I can use here. I wonder if it opened it up in the browser back here. Nope, it did not. Hold on. I was trying to open one up so I can just kind of walk you through it. There we go. Okay, now. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's create one of these projects. So Bill, and tell me if I'm wrong, Bill, but I believe you said you created an app, and it is a tab and React with Fluent UI. Let's pick TypeScript. I'll just put this in where I like to put all my dev stuff. So I'll just put this in play, and I'll just call this Office Hours Bill B. And let it create the project, and then we'll open it up big screen. And again, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can make it easier to see. Okay, so Bill's question is, when you create one of these projects using this template, what the Teams toolkit does is it's two projects. So it's one project that you see everything over here on the left-hand side is a React app using the Create React App utility. And you can see that you go into package JSON and you look at the scripts, and all of this React scripts is coming from the Create React App utility. And then there's another project, like a sub project under the API folder. And this is an Azure Functions project. So Bill's question is, how do you remove the Azure function from the bicep file? So as a follow-up question, Bill, do you just want that? Or do you also want to understand, like, how do I get rid of the Azure function in this project altogether? Like, you want to make it 100% client-side. You just want the React app. Is that what you're asking as well? So I know there's a little bit of a delay here, so I'll let you go ahead and answer that one. But if I come over here and I look at the infra folder, this is where everything is going to end up being provisioned. So if I look at the Azure Bicep file, I know you're in the question, you have Bicep with an S, but this is BICEP. And let's look at what we're going to need to delete here. So this is our Azure Functions app that we have. And then there's also a static web app as well. So with this guy, what I would do here is I would start almost with looking at this parameter that's being passed in and this parameter that's being passed in, because they're going to give you the best hint for what stuff you're going to need and what you're going to want to delete here. So actually, just for kicks, let's do this. I'm going to go through and I'm going to initialize a Git repository in this, save all of our changes as now, and then let's go delete some stuff, and then we'll look at a list of all the changes that I ended up making all at once. So we'll do git init, init, and then git add a, and then git commit initial commit, like that. -m for the message. Okay, so now what changes are we going to end up making here? So I'm going to go to the Azure Function app name. Let's go to the app SKU first, and let's do a find everywhere. So there's two places where it's listed. One of them is going to be here. All right, so this one, So this one here is for the Azure Function app. So this is all the compute for the Azure Function. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this. This server farm is being set up for this guy. Let's make sure that this is only used for our Azure Function. So I'm going to go through and do a search, and let's turn word wrapping on to make it easier to read. Yep. Okay, cool. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to get rid of the server that we're using for this and the function app. And I'm gonna also grab this and do a search. We'll come back and we'll look at that too, because we're gonna have some other stuff we're gonna want to delete. So I'm gonna grab all of this. That, I'm not gonna need that API endpoint either because we're not gonna be pointing to it. This is all the authentication settings for our function app. You can see that with the parent setup, so don't need that. The API is not being used, so I can remove that. The function resource ID, that is not an output that we're going to need. And then all this other stuff that's not being used, we can get rid of it as well. So I can get rid of all of these. Tab endpoint. Nope, we're going to leave the tab endpoint for now. We're not using it. Well, that's interesting. Actually, this tab endpoint should be down here. It's the same value. So that looks like a typo in the template. Let's see, let me scroll a little higher. That's our static web app that's being created, so we don't need to change anything there. Allowed client apps. Now, we don't need this because this entire thing is what's going to configure the apps that are allowed to call this Azure function. So if any of these apps go obtain an access token using the single sign-on capability that we have in Microsoft Teams, it'll make sure that the token was obtained by one of these apps in order to be able to call this Azure function. We don't need any of this. And when I delete this, it's going to actually notice that, hey, you're not using these either. And so I don't need to set up any of these guys either, which means I don't need the function app, the server name, local, secret. I don't need any of this stuff either, because this is all stuff for Azure functions. So none of this stuff is being used by any of mine. So what I'm going to do is let me save all these changes. We can see a list of these changes. I'm just going to stick these over here off to the side and go big screen. And what I'm then going to do is I want to look at our parameters file and find the stuff that we don't need. So we don't need resource-based name. You can see over there, it is being used. But these other ones, the Azure AD client ID, the secret, the tenant, the authority host isn't, and that's not being used either. So we only have 2 parameters we need to pass into this. All right, so that's done. Now the next thing we have is when we do the provisioning lifecycle phase for our Teams app, we want to make sure that we've done everything to also remove all of the Azure function E kind of stuff. So I'm going to come over here to teamsapp.yaml, and what I'm going to do is start intro ID app, some changes that are being made to it, ARM deploy. So it is going to go through. We do want to run this because it's still going to go through and provision everything. But I can get rid of all those parameters. We don't need to worry about those because that we just made those changes. We've made our changes to the bicep file as well. Static web app, we do need that. I think everything looks good in there. Well, we're not using the function app, so we can definitely get rid of any of that stuff because that's not being used. And we're also, well, really, that's our React app. We don't need that. So those we don't need. Still looking through to see if there's anything else we can get rid of. Oh, Azure function, because we won't have any code to deploy, so we can get rid of our Azure function app. Okay, I think everything looks good there. All right, so now all of that stuff is done. Now the last thing I want to do is, let's think about this for a second. What else do I want to do with this? Well, I know we can get rid of the API folder because we're not going to use that. Because if you're not using that, well, I shouldn't do that because you say you've removed it from the local build for debugging. So, I mean, you have the code in here, so it really doesn't hurt to leave it. But that's like a list of all the changes that I would have made here. So again, changes I would have made, and I have to go back. I want to test this too, but let's just leave it as is. So the only changes I made, there was nothing up here at the top. Down a little bit farther, I don't see. So we made those changes here inside of building our app. which is getting rid of the Azure function name because we're not using the Azure function. And then we're not deploying our code for the Azure function, which I could delete the /API folder. In our parameters file, we got rid of everything that had to do with our Azure function app, which is all of those parameters. And in the bicep file, I got rid of a lot of stuff. So a bunch of input parameters. The only thing I got rid of anything that was related to the Azure function app and the Azure AD app that's created not in bicep, but it's created separately, and then it was configuring the Azure function with all of these things from the bicep file when it created the Azure function app. So we got rid of all that. We deleted creating the server farm that's going to host our Azure function app. We deleted the Azure function app itself. Then we also deleted the setting up the authentication settings for your Azure function app. And then at the very end, I changed what some of the outputs were because we're not making some calls with this. We're not actually, sorry, I changed some of the outputs because we no longer have a function app that we need to return back the ID of the app, etc. That's it. So that's the gist of how I would remove it for like on the production side. Going one step further, since let me just double check and see if there's any other questions here. Because if there's no other questions, I'll take it one step further for you. Just want to double check and just see if anybody else has asked a question on any of these other places. Not in Reddit, not on LinkedIn, not on Blue Sky, not in Discord. So here's what else I would do. Let's get rid of the function altogether. API, delete. Cool, that's gone. Now, what else do we need to do here? So if I come over here to package JSON, I'm not going to end up using this API folder, which means I can get rid of this second command to go spin up the API server, and I can actually get rid of the call to concurrentently because I'm only going to make one call for this, which is this guy right here, the tab. You could obviously, because not obviously, never mind, leave it like that. I then am going to want to make some changes. You're going to make some changes in your environment. Well, not really in your environment variables now I think about it, because those aren't going to be used in production. I want to, in the, I think, launch. Launch remote, attach to the front end. Just check to see if there's any back-end stuff that I want to get rid of here. This is all front end. That's all launching it. That's not what I want. So tasks is where I want to look. So validate, provision, deploy. Yep. So validate the prereqs. I want to get rid of start backend. I want to get rid of start backend here as well. Make it easier to make sure we don't grab too much or too little. All that. Don't need to watch the backend. And let's just do a back end 7071. We don't need to worry about this port because that's the port that our Azure function was being spun up using. So we don't need to worry about making sure that's free. We also aren't using NodeMon. So, oh wait, that's not true. We do want that turned on, because that's going to be the port that is going to be opened. Actually, you know what? That's not, I don't think that's correct, the way that type. So 9229 is the port, is the debugging port that is going to open up on the browser that it launches, and then VS Code is going to connect to that port, connect to the browser using that port for the debugger, so I can set breakpoints in the web client. When it says here for the Node.js debugger, it's for the JavaScript debugger. It's not really going to be for Node, I don't think. So I think I can leave that as is. All right, just for kicks. Again, I haven't had a chance to test this, so did this on the fly. Let's see if this works. May have missed some other stuff. So, oh, I know what we already missed, especially on the dev side. While it's doing this, it's going to run into an error with this. On the local, one thing I'm not doing, it should error with this in just a minute, is I'm doing an npm install app package dev tool install. So I don't need this, right? Because we're not doing anything with that Azure function, so I can get rid of that. I do need to install the dependencies for the client-side app, but not for the server-side app. That's what's going to fail in just a minute. Don't really need to worry about these Azure functions, and don't need to worry about creating one of these local files for one of these local configs for our app either. So delete that. And probably should be good now. I think it ran npm install in that folder, but there was just no folder there, so it didn't really do anything. Oh no, it's still in the first one. So I wonder if it's actually removed, but even though I saved my changes, I wonder if it's actually picked those things up. So I'm letting this thing run. Does this help, Bill? Is this what you were looking for? Guess it would be nice if they just gave us a way to create a React app. Oh, there it goes. It just failed doing it because it was doing it inside of the yeah. Okay, so let's try this. So it failed. That's fine, because what we're going to do is, let me just clear it out, close it, and let's do it again, because it just, I bet it tried to do npm install again on our API folder. Like, it loaded everything and then it started running all those commands. The first time it'll go really fast because, or the second time it'll go really fast because it's already done npm install on our client-side app, so it doesn't need to do it again. So that's good. We can see the front end is spinning up. There will be no back end that spins up. There will be no watch task for the back end. And we'll see. Yep, cool. There it goes, spinning up, launching our local dev server, and it's going to launch Teams and in a separate browser window that's somewhere else on my desktop that you guys can't see at the moment. Let's see, where did it actually open that up? Where's Edge? Oh, it's launching Edge right now. I can see that in the, you guys can't see it yet. Let me try and find, there it is. So then on another machine, on my other monitor, it opened up Edge. So ta-da, we're up and running. So there you go. We just stripped out the entire Azure function from the project, and we are now good to go. Awesome, cool. So I see Bill said, yes, that was helpful. That's what you were looking for. And that's it. So I don't see anybody else has any other questions. We still got another 20 minutes. I have one other thing that I can touch on today that is not part of what I was planning on talking about, but I don't want to just, I might as well just talk about it a little bit if we have the time. I don't see any questions. Okay. Well, here's the other thing. A few minutes ago, we talked about, so there's some of the stuff that happened at the Ignite conference, Ignite 2024. Microsoft, this would be a good blog post. I like that. Okay, that was, you know what? Noted. Let me make, I will do that. Good call. Noted. I will do that. I will add that to my content idea list. So thank you for your question, Bill. I appreciate it. Okay. So at the Ignite conference, so this is around like Teams development, Teams bots, etc. So what Microsoft did at the actually, hold on. Where's my let me fix some stuff here. I want to pull up a slide. I want to make sure I do while people are still. Where is it? Okay, we can get rid of that. And I've completely lost my slides. This is great. Why are my slides gone? Man. Oh, there they are. There we go. Okay, now, all right, so let's go and just start like wrapping up some stuff. So what Microsoft did so I'm going to talk a little bit here about Teams, Teams development, and specifically around bots. In the past, we've been able to create bots using the bot framework. And then in the last year or two, we've been able to create bots using a thing called the Teams AI library. And so using the bot framework approach, it was much more imperative code that you wrote, being much more declarative in the sense that if you had a bot that did something, you had to look for the specific string for the user to tell it the command of what it wanted to do. So the example I like to give is like the one that Microsoft uses is like a light bot. So your bot knows how to turn lights on and off. But if the user would have to say, mention the light bot in a channel, and they would say light on, and that's the command we would have to be looking for is the string light on, all one word, no spaces. Any other derivative of that, the bot would not recognize that that's what the intent was of the user. So that's if I was using the bot framework. What the improvement was that we had over the last 2 years is Microsoft they created a thing called the Teams AI library that made it easier for us to create a bot that would leverage a large language model to deduce what the user's intent was. And so if I said at Lightbot, I could say light on, and it would recognize that I want to turn a light on. But if I said something like, it's really bright in here, but I have a massive migraine, can you fix this? From the training that the large language model initially had. So like if you're using GPT-4 or GPT-4o or whatever it is, from some of the training, it would have figured out from all of its knowledge that it accumulated from crawling the internet that if you have a migraine and the lights are on in the room, most people want the lights turned off because they're light sensitive that's causing the migraine. So the way they did this, the bot would then identify that the intent of the user is to turn the light off. And so it would ask the user, do you want to turn the lights off? I can do that. And you just say yes, and it would be able to turn it off. What we would do then in our code is we would have a set of instructions that would tell the bot, here's what you can do. We would have a JSON file that would have a list of, here are the skills that you're capable of. One of those skills is called light on, just like we did with the bot framework. But then we would give it a description of what it does. It has the ability to turn lights on. When the user's prompt from the bot is sent to the large language model, the language model would look at the user's prompt and deduce that the user's intent is to turn a light on, because number one, the bot knows what it can do. The language model knows what it's capable of, turning a light on, and it also knows that the command or the action the skill that I've taught it is light on. And so what the language model then does is it returns back to the Teams AI library this JSON structure that is essentially following what's called the do-say model, which is do an action, or do as many actions, and then say as many things to respond back to the user. So that's how things have worked with bots over the last 2+ years. At the Ignite conference in Chicago mid-November, they announced something new in preview called the Microsoft 365 Agent Service. So a couple things about this. First of all, when you go to create a bot using the Teams toolkit, before you would choose, I want to create a bot using the Teams AI library. That's gone. And now you say, I want to create a bot, but I want to create a custom engine agent. And that custom engine agent uses the Teams AI library to create the bot. Well, now we have this new thing called the Microsoft 365 Agents SDK. It is very early. It is not ready for prime time. Right now, it is only available as a .NET or a C# SDK if you're building .NET. If you're building a bot using .NET. And when you talk to Microsoft about this, you really get the impression that they are the agent service is internally, Microsoft refers to it as Bot Framework v5. From the people I've talked to, both at Microsoft and in the community, the vibe that we get in the community is that ultimately, if I can just close my eyes and think maybe to like the Build conference, because that would be the next logical time when Microsoft would make big announcements around this stuff. But really sometime in the future, that the Bot Framework v4 way of building bots and the Teams AI library of building bots is kind of coming together into this new Agents SDK. I would suspect that that it seems like where we are with Microsoft is that I would suspect that the way things are right now is that they're not ready to talk about it yet, but effectively that the way of building bots for Teams going forward is to use large language models and artificial intelligence to help deduce user intent instead of being so declarative with all of our code. And what that will then end up doing is giving us the ability to really have more sophisticated and better user experiences. So there won't be just a code way of doing it. It'll all be done using large language models. It's not really a huge cost increase over what we were doing before, but it is a much better developer experience and a much better end user experience as well, and giving users what they want. So that's kind of my take on where it looks like where we're going with this. There's nothing like set in stone or anything. They haven't really confirmed anything. This is just I think this is what's happening. And this is what some of the people in the community are also saying as well. So I guess we just have to kind of wait and see where this goes. Right now, though, I would not change what the things I'm building yet. Microsoft would still tell you to use the Teams AI library to create your bots, or if you want to use Bot Framework v4, that's fine. It's just going to be interesting to kind of see where these things go and where this M365 Agents SDK goes. I'm keeping a close eye on it. I am expecting to I'm not expecting to learn too much between now and the next big Microsoft event, which is Build in May of next year, of 2025. I think they've announced it. If not, I'm just assuming, because that's when it always is in May. So that's when I'm expecting to learn more about this. Right now, though, I'm trying to learn more about the Agents SDK. It's just that the information that's out there about it is very, very slim. My take on it is they kind of jumped the gun on the announcement. Maybe it was just to kind of tell people like, hey, heads up, it's coming, because there was no specific session on it at the conference. There's very little information about it on their blog post about it. They just kind of talked hand-wavingly about it. There's no real code samples. Super, super early. So right now, that's the best that we've got. But at any rate, yeah, so that's just about it. I guess with that, we're like 10 minutes left. So I just do a last call for questions. If anybody has any questions, let me go through and just refresh all of these different places where I've posted. We're doing office hours and see if any of them, there's a question posted. I don't see anything in the chat and on the YouTube chat. I don't see anything on the subreddit. I don't see anything on LinkedIn, and I don't see anything on blue sky. So instead of just keeping you for another 10 minutes, I say we just go ahead and wrap it up. So with that, that's our office hours for this month. That's our office hours this month for the December 2024. It wraps up our last office hours for the year. The next office hours that we will have will be in January. It's generally the third Tuesday of the month. That will be on January the 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. In about an hour or so, I will have the event posted on our the event created in the YouTube stream, live scheduled and everything up on our YouTube channel. If you want, subscribe to the newsletter at voitanos.io or go to newsletter.voitanos.io. Subscribe to the newsletter. There is a way when you get your email, if you scroll to the bottom, you can manage your subscriptions. And in that managed subscription, you can opt in to getting an email reminder about a week and a half before we go live with the office hours. And it gives you a chance to submit your questions ahead of time so that you have a chance to get your questions submitted ahead of time. Or it can be like this time and you can get a private demo like Bill got that everyone else got to witness. And I got a new blog post idea that I can write for this. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you everybody for joining us today. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, happy holidays for for your religion of choice. Happy New Year. That's it. I hope to see everybody at our next office hours in January. Take care, everybody.